on the StreamYard and just share a little on the LinkedIn. First of all, I just wanted to ask you how are you, and sorry for my English. It's not very good, but I hope that it would be okay just for talking about for technical stuff.
Yes, of course, of course. Hello. Well, I'm fine. I think your English is better than my Italian, so that's not that hard.
So we have 30 minutes of talk. First of all, thank you so much to have accepted my invitation. When you accepted, I had a lot of messages from a lot of people. They told me, "Wow, you have Sander. That's fantastic! Wow, incredible!" Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
First of all, when I started working on the IoT on the IoT world, a lot of people that were senior. I was junior in that period, but they were senior. Told me that if Sander shares something, you have to get a watch. So I just wanted to ask you, do you know that you are you of yourself that you are a guru in this field or not?
Well, if I look at the amount of people who try to contact me, for some reason I have some information or knowledge that people are interested in. I don't see myself as a guru. I love to share what I know and what I learn, and from that I get questions, and that will put well, I have to think twice, because sometimes I make an assumption, well, this looks like this and it works like that, and that's good enough. But then I have to stretch myself even more, and I learn a lot. And that's something that really fits well with Internet of Things. Internet of Things is such a broad topic, from physical devices towards the connectivity, towards the cloud, towards enterprise, security, of course, monitoring. It's such a broad topic. There's so much to tell and to learn and to share. So that's what I do.
Perfect. Watching also your profile on LinkedIn, I've been watching that you have been working on the IoT. I think around. Tell me if I'm wrong, but around 12 years, 15 years, you are into this field. I think.
Well, actually, I've always been a developer, software developer. So that's mainly web development. Before that, client server. I've done that also. But somewhere in 2010, I started to look into cloud development and building back offices in cloud, and web development in cloud. And then came the mobile apps. So I also have built mobile apps. For some reason, I stick to Windows Phone. Well, that's not really a success, but I learned a lot about mobile development. But luckily, somewhere in 2015, Microsoft started with offering Internet of Things. And that was quite new. And well, it reminded at the things that I did during my being a student. I did production automation and logistics as the final subject of my study. But for some reason, I ended up in enterprise web development. But okay, then comes along Internet of Things. So I was brought back in the stuff that I really loved. So from there, 2015, 2016, and then I have to go down from web development, from connectivity and telemetry ingest towards devices and lower connectivity in between. So it was a journey for me.
Yeah. It's very long story starting from the university. I think. Do you think have you ever imagined that this field of IoT has had this success, has become so important in a lot of field and in the business as well?
No, not directly at first, because I was more into web development and websites, and of course mobile devices with apps. But the whole concept of industrial IoT, that was something that I knew it existed, but it was something that happened in a factory. So when in 2016 and 17 I started to do stuff with edge compute, I had to be in that factory to get stuff connected. So there I learned that the world of operational technology, the stuff that is done in a factory, it was always air gapped. It was always certain hardware with certain tooling on it, and it runs for years and it never changes. And now suddenly it had to be connected. It has to be disclosed. There are risks involved. The IT, the information technology guys, the enterprise was suddenly interested in what's happening into a factory. So they start to push their world, their thoughts about security into the factory. And that was the interesting part, because their two worlds collided. You have the OT and the IT. If I look at IT, then it's as long as I don't lose any data, everything goes well. Where in a factory, it's more, if I don't lose a leg or an arm, then everything goes well. So about security and safety, that's such a different topic and a different way of looking at stuff.
That is very similar to a metaphor of the hardware and the software that tries to unify.
Yes. So in between, the glue between these two worlds is Internet of Things, because we have to make that connectivity. So it's not only about hardware and software and connectivity and internet connection and cloud. It's also about people and trust and working together and accepting the flaws or strengths of both worlds. The way that a factory is managed is quite different from the way that an enterprise solution is managed. For example, regarding safety and passwords, the OT world has its own rules. If you are air gapped, you can leave every password out, because you don't need it. It's nobody can enter the factory if it's only when they arrive physically. So we don't need passwords, and I don't want to have a question, do you want to unlock the screen or not, when there's an accident. It has to run instantly. So that was for me, let's say, the bonus of doing IoT. It's not only about the technology, but also about people and bringing them together. And there's nothing better than seeing telemetry, raw telemetry flowing from devices towards the enterprise, and people having insights, direct insights in what's happening, and adding value that way. And for both, not only for the enterprise, but also for the people who's actually doing the work. So and that was for me a game changer when I figured that out. Hey, there's more than just the connectivity. I also have to think about the people, and that's the best part of the whole territory.
Very interesting, your thoughts. Yeah. If you were at the beginning of your career, what would you say to a young Sander that starts programming that starts joking with the IoT world?
Put some time in doing stuff with binary code and protocols. When I first started with IoT, I thought, okay, if I can do stuff with REST, then I'm okay. HTTPS, that's the stuff that I knew of. So when a customer said, well, we want to do something with Modbus, I said, Modbus, that's 20 years old, that protocol, and there's no security in there, so why would you use that? Well, actually, the stuff just behind me with the lights, that's doing a Modbus, RTU.
Fantastic.
With serial ports, and it's connected to the cloud. It's a demonstration, because I had to learn to collect protocols. If you're doing years and years for it, Windows Communication Foundation and SOAP and REST, and at some point it's easy to forget that there's more in the world than just HTTP. Nowadays, I'm going back into WebSockets or UDP, even UDP. Lots of stuff is working with UDP still. And that's something that I think, okay, that's stuff that we did for 20 years ago. That's not interested anymore, but it's still valid. It's still a valid solution. And the same goes for serial ports. I had never thought that a few years ago that I would do serial port communication again, and it's quite hard. If you try to do something with serial communication on a Linux solution, the happy flow is always working, but once you get the actual solution requirements, and you see that you have to run it on Linux, on containers, there's a trust boundary, and there's there's some stuff that you have to do.
Yeah, sure.
And another thing that I should told myself 20 years ago was put more effort in role-based access control, and because also we are doing this already for years with Active Directory and with all the libraries that we have, and it seems pretty simple. We just put in the libraries and you get the stuff running. but now I see in the cloud that Microsoft is putting Active Directory controlling a lot of resources and connectivity, where we used to have connection strings or SAS tokens. We now see that we can also go for Active Directory control. So
Yeah.
that's something that I have to put some effort in. I was becoming a bit sloppy with that. It works. It's okay. So I've bigger fishes to catch.
I think that it's very common. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So and well, the interesting part is if I look back into my career, I graduated somewhere in 1993. So that's almost how many years ago?
I think
Ouch! Ouch!
it's around my age, so it's 27 years old. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I started doing client server, what was still a valid solution back then. Just have a big database and you write an application on top of it and it's connecting directly. And you had all that stuff with if you had a piece of hardware, it's not supporting plug and play USB, so you had to toggle with all the switches and stuff to get it running. But that gave me a good foundation towards the rest of my career. I've always been active in the Microsoft stack, and if I look at the jobs that I did, I've always been active in consultancy. I've done some pretty weird solutions, like connecting a globe, a simulation of the globe, and you could see where television sets were put on or off in the world. So the customer had a idea of, hey, in this time zone there are a lot of television sets getting connected. That was in the beginning years of having a smart TV. So what they did, they just listened in the IP address, which was used when smart TV was turned on and the login account was checked. That's something like that. And I also worked 12 years ago on a check-in, check-out kiosk for a hotel chain, where people could check in for a room themselves. So they had the reservation and they came in, and there's a touch screen, and there's a passport reader and a hand signature writer or reader. You have to write it yourself. And there was even an NFC reader and writer. It disposed a NFC card to unlock the door of your hotel room. And because that is a generic card, we also had a A5 terminal printer in there, which printed the room number, so people cannot remember their room for a number of minutes. So we printed it out.
Following your says, what you are telling a lot of interesting projects where you were involved. What project do you think? What project was your most for you? Was most the most interesting at all? If you have to do a chart,
I've done a number of projects
but what is the most maybe challenging? I think.
Well, recently I have done a project for an offshore solution It's for cranes on ships or on drilling platforms. If they want to get something from a ship, they want to lift a load, then they have to cope with the waves. Ships are moving, or even
Okay.
the crane is moving. So
Wow.
I got in contact with a customer who has built a solution. It's an extension of the hook, and it's it's a device which is attached to the original hook of the crane, and then it can compensate the waves. And at the right point, it can say, okay, when the ship goes down, it immediately lifts up the information of the the load from the ship, and so it's a device. And they asked me, well, can we have it connected to the cloud? And I said, well, okay, I think we can. But then they said, well, okay, but there are two messages, and it's with diagnostics, and these are byte arrays. And I said, okay, byte arrays. And they said, well, it's with UDP. Oh, UDP. Wait a minute. That's the project, the protocol that I didn't use for years. So I had to invest some time in doing UDP in a Docker container. So once I had figured that out, well, that's a nice topic for a new blog. How doing and to put it on GitHub with as a sample reference on how to do UDP on a Docker container on Azure Iot. And then they said, well, it's with 50 hertz. Okay, so you want to do real-time diagnostics to the cloud with several messages. With 50 hertz with UDP on a Linux environment, which is a generic operating system, so it's not real time. So I said, well, there are some chances that we cannot cope with the speed due to the limitation of the network or limitation with the operating system. So in the end, the solution that I came up with is, okay, so let's say each message is sent over two paths. One is the hot path and the other is the cold path. That means that a message with an interval, say every 1 second we take a message, and that's sent to the IoT hub, and from there it's sent to Grafana, and there's a beautiful dashboard, and it gives you a good impression about what the device is doing. But the other information, with a much higher speed, lots and lots more data, it's put in a local blob on the device, on the edge device, and I use REST to send it to the cloud, to an Azure blob storage. And the idea is that REST communication of big files is much cheaper than sending each message apart, because then you have to pay for the number of messages.
You have bulked the messages in one blob. I know that the method upload blob of the SDK of Azure IoT was deprecated. I know, but I think that there is another way to upload.
The Azure IoT Hub supports both single message upload and blob file upload for direct internet connected devices, like a Raspberry Pi, which is directly connected. But I'm using Azure IoT Edge, and Microsoft provides a Docker container which simulates a Azure storage account locally. So you can use the same programming language, which you and code that you use for cloud connectivity towards storage account locally. And it also comes with a automatic sync pattern. So a file which is created locally is automatically synced with the cloud. So indirectly,
Okay.
I use REST and to send those files up to the cloud. But for me, it's just, well, I fill a file in memory and I
Yeah.
write it down, and then it's
Yeah.
fire and forget. So
Very
this
interesting.
was pretty challenge to get done. There was also some time constraints on the project, but it works as expected. There are still some things that we have to finalize, but the overall solution is doing well.
Yeah, very fascinating. Also, the scenario of the waves. Yeah, um, Edge, cloud, and fog are three concepts that if you work on IoT, you hear every day and very a lot with a lot of analysis and so on. There was a time when it was said that the cloud was more important than the edge, and and this in real now changed because of the edge. Now it's very important because you have to aggregate data that you want to send to the cloud because it's cheaper to do locally and to have all the situation. And also the fog concept has it's important, its weight. What do you think about it? Is it is it one of these three spheres that is more important? There is a sort of a trending topics on IoT between the edge, the clouds, and the fog.
Well, most of the projects that I do are regarding edge compute, and that there you already mentioned a number of reasons why edge compute is important. Edge compute is typically that there is a gateway, a device on the end of the local network, which is cloud enabled, and it can make a secure outbound call towards the cloud. And behind that edge device, there can be other devices, or because it's a device with quite some compute power, it can do stuff locally. So it can connect directly to sensors and take the information, and it can aggregate and filter and, well, maybe do machine learning on it, or it's a video stream, so it can do some video analysis on top of it with AI or machine learning. So there's that's the way that edge works. But there's a few reasons why edge is important and become important, because first of all, if you send something to the cloud and you make a decision in the cloud, which is a normal solution, it takes some time before the message comes back.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a local solution reacting within milliseconds, and you have to wait 200 milliseconds because there's the lag on the internet and all the resources behind it which are doing their stuff, then having logic running locally, which is deployable and manageable from the cloud, well, that's a big plus. Plus, when the internet connection is not available, because, well, it can be 4G, it can be on a ship, it can, well, there are a number of reasons why the connectivity could corrupt. That we had a project running in the rainforest of Malaysia. Well, if it rains, and it rains a lot in Malaysia, in the rainforest, we had no connectivity.
Yeah.
So what we did, and that's the beauty of the solution that I'm using, it's automatically there already. I just collect all the telemetry which is supposed to be sent to the cloud. I collect it locally. And once the connection is up again, I send the data with the
Yeah.
right timestamp
Yeah.
to the cloud.
Yeah.
So that's the reason. And next to that, there's of course it's cheaper to collect it locally and aggregate it and just send the stuff that's needed towards the cloud and leave out all the other stuff. There could be an IP problem when there's, for example, a camera which is recording information about people or about products, or it's looking into some factory where people are not really favoring having a camera running. But you're not sending the pictures to the cloud, but only the information that is seen, like the number of people seen, the number of people with helmets or without helmets. That's kind of information, and not which people it is. You can leave that out. You can, or you can say, okay, I want to have a snapshot from what's happening, but you can black out the faces. You can just cut them out so the people are seen, the persons are seen, but not who it is. So that's stuff that you can do on an edge device because you have to compute. So edge compute with that has become more and more important. And that's something that we have not directly foreseen back in 2015. Back then, we said, okay, we just collect data and we send it to the cloud. But all the other scenarios on top of that, with all the constraints, that makes it really challenging. And luckily, with the tooling that we have, based on open source Docker containers, security supported by certificates, or even a TPM, trusted platform module, so a security chip. Well, that's it's so easy to start and to be productive in a short while. That's really great. And so Edge is a well, the front office of the cloud. There's a strong connectivity between cloud and Edge. But what I really like is that I can make my Edge devices almost zero touch. You have to install it, you give it the right security, it makes a call towards the cloud, and it says, okay, I'm here. Do you have something to do for me? And then from the cloud, you say, okay, I want to have this logic running on your device.
Yeah.
Or later on, after a few years or months, we decide, well, we want to have some other properties or other settings or even other logic running on that same device.
Yeah.
You have to administer that, of course, and register, and you have to be smart about that single device, what it has to do. So there's some administration involved, but we are capable of changing almost everything on the device automatically, zero touch. So we don't have to.
Yeah,
We don't
very
have to send people
interesting.
to it.
Yeah, very interesting. This last point. And about this, what is for you, in your opinion, the state of art of the edge computing about this? Because yeah, it's very now. It's very maybe it's very easier to plug in to plug and play a device and change the configuration with, for example, tools like IoT Central and etc. But nowadays, for example, I just talked yesterday with some colleagues that were trying to set up a particular situation on IoT Edge, and they were stuck. They were totally astonished by the complexity to, for example, making talking some Docker containers on the machine. So it was for they not so easy to configure it. Do you think? What do you think is it nowadays the state of art of installation, configuration, zero touch, and etc.
Well, because of all the moving parts, the challenge with IoT is that you have to gain knowledge about a lot of things. For me, Docker containers was something quite new. The first version of Azure IoT Edge, it was the Azure IoT Edge SDK, which was still some DLLs which were deployed. But that was not the way to go. So Microsoft decided to move over to Docker containers, which is a really nice design, and it stands already for quite a few years, and they are still supporting it, and it becomes bigger and bigger and better. But for me, I had to learn about Docker containers and about the container create options. And I wanted to do serial communication from a Docker container. So suddenly I had to think about, so I have to create a user for the Docker container and a user for the and give that permissions towards the serial port. So I had to do it with Linux, so change mod, whatever, and I have to do the right mappings inside the container create options. It takes some time. The interesting part with Internet of Things is that the happy flow is easy. You can get up and running in minutes, and connecting a device is so easy. And then you say, yes, I can do this. I'm an IoT master. But once you do your first production solution, and say, well, Docker containers are quite hard. If you want to have access to a graphical card or to the file system, or you want to do something with port mappings for UDP, for example, you have to figure out how these containers are managed. And I can manage them from the cloud. That's if I really need to change the file access to folders on disk, that's not something that I can do from the cloud. Maybe there's a SSH communication next to the cloud communication, so I can remotely log in and I can fix some stuff on the operating system. But from a container perspective, I don't have to touch the device anymore once it is set up. But you have to learn about it. Yeah. It took me quite some years to work on IoT. And you ask me, do you feel yourself as a guru?
Yeah.
No, and this is the reason why. The only thing that I know is that I'm pretty well informed about the stuff that I do not know yet. There's some stuff that I know. There's some stuff that I don't know. But well, I'm willing to learn still. And there's once you work a while with some stuff, you start to see the connections and the connectivity. So if somebody says, well, I have some problem here and there, okay, I think it's this, or I think it's that. Check it out. Do the baby steps, make a little test and check out if this works. And then, that's then you reach some quite kind of level that you say, okay, I know this and I manage this. Now I think of there was one thing when Microsoft asked me about the certification program that they have regarding IoT, the AZ 220 certificate. They asked me to join as a subject matter expert. And I think that's a better term for the level that I've reached. I'm a subject matter expert because I know about IoT. I know about the pain of doing IoT. I know about what's possible and I have some assumptions about things that I think that should be possible too, but I still have to learn if it will work or not. And that makes me agile. That makes me productive.
Yeah, very interesting. You told that IoT, it is very it has a lot of areas where maybe you don't know, or maybe you are you are not able to practice or to work with. What do you think about the trend? The trend that there is now, but maybe it will be the future of the artificial intelligence and the model, the machine learning on the edge. Because I just uh, I just wanted to point out my question. A developer is not a data scientist, so a developer or maybe a IoT expert is, yeah, a person that maybe has a good knowledge about the connection, the protocols, but creating a model or talking about artificial intelligence is very, in my opinion, it's very distant and very far where a software developer has its comfort zone. Do you think that it will be there will be some skills to adopt to get, or it will be a field apart, and yeah, there will be other figures, other type of colleagues, other type of expert that we will work with an IoT expert, and yeah.
Yes. Well, if you look at the role of an IoT developer, that's a person who is responsible for the stuff that is sitting between a engineer in the field, which is building a device or creating a device or configuring a device for telemetry. And on the other hand, there's a data scientist which will use the data which is coming in, um, and it will give insights. He's the one who will actually give the insights about the data that's coming in. So our concern is that, first of all, we have to talk with the engineer about which data do you have. On the other hand, I have to talk to the engineer, which data do you need? And then I have to make that pipeline from ingesting the data over a communication channel and shaping it in such a way that it is capable, available for a data scientist. And that can be in a cold storage, just all the raw data that I get in, I put it in there. Or there's already some insights. Well, if you shape it like this and filter like that, then I can put it directly in the database, and then I can put beautiful reports on it. And then, of course, then there's the alerts and events, and the short. There's something going wrong that has to be sent directly and picked up by logic apps or email or Teams channels, whatever. So we have to make that available. Then, of course, there's security. It has to be secure, and it has to be monitored. So my concern is, am I aware when data is lost? Because at some point, data will be lost, and I want to know the reason of it, and maybe I can at some point try to figure out or mimic the data that is lost, or I can figure out how to get it in via a second way. But that's my responsibility as an IoT developer. So if you're saying, well, there's machine learning involved, yes, there is, but for me, that's more like a piece of logic, which I put somewhere in that chain. And well, on the other hand, there are some stuff that I can do myself although I'm not a machine learning guy or a data scientist, but for example, anomaly detection in stream analytics is not that hard. So
Yeah,
that can be a really nice
yeah,
tool for a data scientist, for a IoT developer, to get insights into the streams of the data. If there's a drop in the data, in the amount of data coming in suddenly, well, that's a spike or dip analysis. So, of
yeah,
when there's a delay somewhere and suddenly all the data comes in. Well, normally if I'm not watching, I think everything goes well because in the end I have all the data that I needed. But because of the delay, that's like also a spike or a dip or a trend analysis. So
yeah,
there could be going wrong something.
yeah. I
So
I totally agree. I totally agree with you in all of what you said. I in LinkedIn, I my work job, my job title is is the data plumber, because I define myself just a sort of tube when the water flows. So just I connect things yeah, I. I just ensure, but I totally agree with you in the world, all what you said. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's data plumbing. I also got a trophy from a project where I was called the data plumber, with all the pipes and stuff that they put together.
No,
Uh,
fantastic. No.
so, but that's essentially what we are doing. We are making it possible. Look at it. It in the end, it's all about the value of the data, and the insights that we get from the data. Uh, what we are doing is like water. Nobody
Yeah,
cares about the water coming from a tap. It's there. And the same goes for IoT. Nobody cares about IoT. Just make it
yeah,
happen. Or tell me when data is lost for some reason. You can build a beautiful sensor, but in the end, if a lorry drives over it, it's broken, or it's stolen, or the battery runs out, or well, you can figure it out. Somebody is interested in the SIM card, which is inside the device. So the the communication is lost. It happens, and that's something that we have to cope with, and we have to accept. But we must be able to manage it and to measure it and monitor it.
yeah. So just let me ask you something tricky, because we are very similar in thinking and in our thoughts. Just a question. A tricky question. You have worked? I see that you have been working with the Microsoft technologies. I think that I don't know if you have ever worked just with Microsoft, or maybe you have had the possibility to work with other type of technologies. My question is, do you think that Microsoft is the top of this subject like IoT? Do you have tried other type of technology like Amazon AWS IoT Core? And are you do you have like a lot of people have some faith, you trust a lot in Microsoft, and you have your sight very blinded because of you have married with that type of technology?
Yes, that's a question, a hard question to answer, because I understand. Yes, to be frankly, most of the stuff that I have done in the last couple of years is all Microsoft related. I've been a Borland Delphi developer until 2005. For more than 10 years. I even was a certified developer for Delphi, Borland Delphi. So from back then, Microsoft was the big evil. I was doing Borland, Delphi, building kick-ass applications. But back in 2005, I decided to move over to C# and become a C# developer. And that was pretty easy for me because the guy who invented the Borland Object Pascal language was the same guy which was also involved in C#. So if you narrowed your eyes a little bit, you were looking at Delphi, but with a C notation, and there was a garbage collector suddenly. And since then, I've always been active in the Microsoft community. I didn't need to step out of this world because Microsoft gave me all the tools that I needed. And what I learned is that Microsoft is not the same as Microsoft 10 years, 15 or 20 years ago. They are embracing open source. They're one of the biggest open source contributors. And what I also learned is that Microsoft is reachable. If you have a question and you know how to pull the right strings, you can in contact with the product teams, and they are really interested in what you have to tell. If you start bashing, you have a silly product, I don't want to use it, it's not working, that's not really constructive. But so you have to be constructive in your comments. But they are interested because they want to learn. Microsoft wants to learn from the customers how things are doing. And a lot of what they do is open source. And actually, I already made a lot of contributions towards the documentation. If I see a typo or something which is plain wrong or outdated, you can make a pull request of it. And Microsoft will say, okay, we review it, and they will accept it or not. They start a discussion about your comments. And well, if you are right, they will accept your pull request, and they will even make you co-contributor to that page. If you go to the Microsoft documentation, at the top there's a list of contributors, and most of them normally are not from Microsoft. Those are just plain readers looking at the documentation. Well, okay, this phrase is not okay, or I can make some changes. You are allowed to. It will not be accepted directly. It's a pull request, so you have to hope for that they accept it. But that's how it works nowadays. If I would tell it myself 20 or 30 years ago when I was a student, well, do you know that you will be author of Microsoft documentation? I would laugh at myself. No, that's not possible. Microsoft is just this big monolithic company. They will never do this. Nowadays they do. I'm in contact with product teams about stuff that I think that is interesting for them. And for example, the project that I did in Malaysia, it is mentioned during a build event for Microsoft. And I was not aware of that. So I listened at the stream. It wasn't even live for me. So I learned. I watched the rerun. Well, we have a edge device running in the jungle of Malaysia, they said. And wait, are there more companies available of doing stuff in the jungle of Malaysia? No, that's us. That's how it goes. You can get in contact. It's a fairly human company nowadays.
Have you ever wanted to see the other what the other technologies do?
Yes, of course. I'm interested in the other IoT solutions because although Microsoft, in my opinion, is one of the best cloud platforms for IoT, I'm
Yeah,
still interested in what the competition is doing. Also, because if I see something which is better, with which uh, maybe my scope is a little bit narrowed down, but if I look at other stuff, I say, well, maybe this is also something that could work for us, for the Microsoft stuff. So I can bring that back to the teams and say, okay, I've seen something which is really interesting. Is this something that you can pick up? So yes, the only problem is a little bit that I'm doing a lot with Microsoft solutions right away, and there's some lack of time. I'm too busy with all the stuff that I'm already doing. But
yeah,
there are some colleagues doing stuff with other projects with other technology, and I've learned to start looking and to start learning from what they are doing. When I was a Delphi developer, and there was some guy programming. Well, it was not programming. He was doing something with Visual Basic, but it was not programming. Delphi, object oriented. That's the stuff. That's so back then. Java and non-Java was there were actually two sides. It was like the battle of programming languages. Nowadays, I'm doing Python, C Sharp, Node.js, no Java yet, but it could have been Java because the containers that I built,
yeah,
they can be running in so many languages.
yeah,
There are SDKs available for each program language. It's
yeah,
if I have a group of programmers available for the project, which are only capable of doing JavaScript, probably the solution that they will build, the containers that they build, will be built in JavaScript. Or if the customer is a company which does Python a lot, I'm not forcing them to say, okay, well, I'm pretty good in C Sharp. Let's do it in C Sharp. That's not how the world works anymore.
yeah, sure. In the chat, Andrea Saltarello, that is another MVP of Microsoft, very important in Italy, has said that Delphi was truly ahead the competition. Too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was David and Goliath. We were that little company doing the fancy stuff. That's I well, actually, when I started with C Sharp in 2005, I started working with Visual Studio 2003 Service Pack 1, where I came from Delphi 7, which was then the IDE to program. I was feeling lost. There was almost no tooling for me. I had to remember all the stuff that I had to program. There was no um,
ouch.
design time feedback about the database queries that I did. The tooling was not that rich. Microsoft was still learning to build EDIs.
Yeah.
So
And talking about the security, that is a topic that you've mentioned, and if I don't make mistake, it was one of the biggest trend of that I read at the last at the in the last year, the security on edge is one of the most important thing nowadays. But I've worked around on 2022 projects on IoT, on AWS, on Azure, and to be honest, I've never thought a lot about the security, because when I get my all my certificates, the connection string, I create a device that is secure natively. I don't think a lot about this topic. Am I wrong, or there is something that I don't maybe I don't find out, because if I've read a report about the attacks, the cyber attacks on the device, and they are very high, they are very heavy. What is the right approach on this topic?
We can spend another hour on security, but the most important thing about IoT is that you have to think about, who do I trust? Actually, I don't want to trust anything. Think about, I'm already hacked. What if somebody is on the local network? What can he do? What if he managed to log into the device? What if he gets access to the network? If you think with zero trust from the start, you gain a lot already. On the other hand, we already get a lot of security for granted. For example, back to Azure IoT Edge, it's doing outbound communication only. So there's no inbound port which is listening. The device is in control. It makes the call to the outside world. That doesn't mean that it's a one-way communication. It's two-way communication, but the device is in control, and so attackers don't know that the device is there. Then there's the way that we can work with certificates to secure the account. There is a provision service in between. There should be a provision service in between, which make it possible to switch a little bit more and to deprovision a device or let it reprovision again. And there's support for the TPM, Trusted Platform Module, which is a certificate on a chip, something like that. It's an identity on a chip. So you have to open the chip, but these chips are hard to open to get to any information in there. And the certificate also doesn't expire. So you're good to go for a very long time. So if you think about how to make that communication secure, always use TLS. Don't go for HTTP. Actually, I believe if you try to connect to the IoT Hub with HTTP, it will be rejected. And that's how it goes further on. Think about virtual networks. Don't put everything in one network, but make segments of networks. This is the enterprise segment. This is the data ingest segment, and there are some logic segment and data storage in between. So if somebody breaks in one virtual network, they cannot go directly into another network. So that's and
so your type of approach is to pretend to be an attacker, and to think about what could happen if if something happens, right? A login,
So there are a number of best practices that I put on the projects that I'm working with. It's the question behind it is, do you accept the availability of a penetration tester? If you say, well, let them come and let them try to figure out, then you know you're okay. pretty okay. But if they a penetration test, is that something that we want at this moment? Then you have still some work to do.
Yeah, yeah, I see. You have been working as a consultant for a lot of years. I think, yeah, around more than 10 years. What do you think about the a question that is not very technical, but is about the job? What do you think? What have you learned about the consultancy? What is the three more most important points that you have about how to deal with a customer, a client?
Oh, customers, they deliver the good stuff. There's an opportunity, there's a problem, and we are able to fix it. So let's fix that problem. And along the way, we learn some new things and new tricks and new tools, and that makes us better programmers, better problem solvers, and the customer is happy. But there are some pitfalls. First of all, customers don't always know everything about what they are asking. So they say, "Well, I want to have this." Okay, but that it isn't possible to build something like that. Maybe you can go for something like that. So be aware that you don't fall into the dreams of a customer. Keep your feet on the ground. On the other hand, once a customer sees, well, it's doing well, I would have this also, and of course for the same price, if it's possible, fixed price. Well, maybe it's not good to do that at this moment, but just make a backlog, prioritize, start doing Scrum or Agile development. That's how you can fix that. And we just put it on the backlog, and there we decide what is important and what's not. And there's always something to keep for the next time. But first, fix this, and then third.
Well, yeah.
Third is that don't forget the non-functionals. That's the stuff that a customer doesn't not want to pay for, but it is needed, like technical debt. You try to fix a problem, so you come with a solution, but okay, it works, but it's not ready normally. Like security, yes, we have the data going from A to B, but still we need to add a VPN on top of it. And the customer said, well, okay, VPN, why should I do that? It's not needed. Leave it out for now. But then don't forget to put it somewhere again and again on the list of stuff that has to be done. Same goes for programming issues or DevOps related tasks. If you don't automate your work and you do something for 5 devices, that's okay. That will work. But once they go into production and they have 5,000 or 500,000 devices, well, that automation thing that we talked about 3 months ago, it's pretty important right now, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's the most interesting part regarding consultancy.
What have you learned about how to deal with the aggressivity of a customer?
The what? Can you rephrase that?
What do you how can you deal with the aggressivity, maybe a customer that is never happy, a customer that tries to it is not able to make your job easier, but it tries to make it harder. What have you learned about it?
Yes, I've had these customers in the past, and it's always hard to have that discussion. They want the most amount of work being done in the least amount of time with the least amount of people, and then I draw that triangle with resources, time, and money, and you have to tell the customer what do you want? Do you want to have more functionality? Then you have to put in more people or more time. Or do you want to have it in a shorter period? Well, then you have to think about adding more resources, or you have to leave out functionality, because there's a fourth factor, and that's the triangle itself. That's the quality.
Yeah.
If you don't,
I was telling you.
That's the downside. And if a customer said, well, okay, I want to have it for less quality, okay, then you have to think twice if this is the right customer for you. Because if the customer values are not the same as your own values, then that's the discussion. It's not about the amount of work that has been done, but about values.
Yeah, absolutely. Also because to do something of a quality that you don't want to do, it is very hard for a developer and to accept. Yeah. So thank you so much. It should be 30 minutes of talk, but we had more than 1 hour. So thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
It was a very honor for me to talk with you, and I'm very happy about it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Let's meet again next time.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Sander. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Luca.
See ya. Bye.